Mm.
90% of the time whenever I engage back, like they're either fold or they kind of dampen down what they're saying or whatever. And like 10% of the time, maybe they dig in even deeper and say even more wild stuff. But for the vast majority of the time, you
Got it.
just got them in a bad day, or
Right.
they weren't thinking about as if they were speaking to you. They're speaking as though you're some performer, some circus animal that they can just yell at. And then when you
Yeah.
actually engage back, like that's when they're like, whoa. Now, I
Yeah.
typically say to never ever get in an argument with somebody in the comments. That's just a bad look because as a creator, you're representing your audience within your comments and you have a brand. And so once you comment, like people will see that and they'll see how you handle that as well.
All right. Welcome to the first episode of 2024 and episode 6 of Stories with Shomik. Today's guest is Nathan Kennedy, aka Nate New Money. I don't know why I did that. I first came across Nate when I was deep down the rabbit hole of personal finance and career TikTok, and I remember the first uh, it was a role play conversation of a guy and his friend going back and forth about a career in tech sales, and his friend is very confused as to why this guy makes so much money, and just thinks he's highly overpaid. And the friend walks him through the pros and cons and the nuances around it. And I thought it was one of the most nuanced videos I've seen in given that the format is less than a minute, and as someone who spent pretty much his entire career in sales, I thought it was really, really well done. So I immediately hit follow and kept following your content. And then a few weeks later, I was talking to someone I'd met through LinkedIn, your friend Tammy Lee. So shout out to Tammy.
Mhm. Yeah, Tammy.
And she was like, "Hey, you should invite this guy on your podcast. He's a finance content creator." And I was like, "Sure, who?" And she sent me your page, and I was like, "What? No way! I know this guy. I've been following him." And it just goes to show that the internet has just made the world a much smaller place. And sure, there's a lot of shit going on online as well, but like sometimes it works out really, really well. So Nate, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and welcome to the show.
No, it's my pleasure, and it means a ton to hear that video resonate with you. I mean, I always really like to hear what videos do what for some people, and I know the
Yeah.
career series was one where I felt like there was a huge gap with it, and so the tech sales thing. I mean,
Mhm.
tech sales still sales in general, people don't really understand
Yeah.
how crazy it gets. So
Yeah.
man, I love that. I love that you like that video.
Yeah. The other one that I mean, I like a lot of your content, but the other one that sort of stayed with me the most was the conversation around making a will.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was also very, very well handled, given that it is a pretty heavy topic. And I've actually sent that video to a couple of people whom I know very well, and like I'm a big believer that everyone, if you're working and you have, no matter your age, you need to have a will in place because you never know
Hmm.
what will happen tomorrow.
Hmm.
And it 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 is a little bit of a tough conversation to have with my friends, because obviously it's not something that you bring up on a Friday night when you're hanging out together. But like I've sent that video to a few people to get that conversation started. So big fan of everything you've been putting out on into the internet. But before we get into your content creation journey, I told you this. I gave you a heads up. I need to know Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari.
Yeah,
What are
man.
your
I
thoughts?
so I really recently, like I've always kind of been like a fringe fan of Formula One, but obviously,
Yeah.
you know, binge watched all of Drive to Survive last year, and I don't know, it's
Hmm.
just that's the story for a lot of us. But so it really got me invested, and
Yeah.
I think this is insane. I think it's probably the biggest like story for Formula One maybe ever. Like it's really big news,
Yeah.
especially with the media the way it is these days, and I think it's pretty shocking. Some people are saying
Mhm.
there were signs, but it's pretty shocking. And the biggest thing for me, and I always found this weird, even when Ricardo went from like Renault to McLaren, like he was there
Yeah,
for a year. Like he left and then he just hangs out for a year. And like Formula One's weird like that. So I think it'll be
it is.
awkward,
Yeah,
and and it just makes this season even more interesting. So
100%, 100%. Are you have you been a Mercedes fan or a Ferrari fan, or are you like me?
I
I'm
like.
like Lewis and Mercedes second.
Yeah, I mean, I like Lewis. I think he gets a lot of shit. You know, I maybe I should be swearing, but I think he gets a lot of
That's
heat.
not.
But you know, I like Lewis, and I love the Ferrari brand. Obviously, it's a
Mhm.
huge brand. And but like
Yeah,
in terms of cheering and things like that, like I don't really have much of a team. I you know, you kind of root for the characters, but just with respect to Drive to Survive, they make you love everybody a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's
for
kind of
sure.
tough to choose the way they position it. But I mean, yeah, I think for the most part, I'm just a fan of the sport now. I'm a very young, novel fan, but I am a fan.
Hey, it's which just goes to show how important content is at building distribution. Drive to Survive is basically F1's blog that they've created and they've put it out, and it's doubled viewership, it's doubled um, what is the word I'm looking for? Like now the US has 3 races, which was never the case before.
Hmm.
So it is awesome. It is awesome. Cool. Okay, back to Nate's origin story. I'm always
Yeah.
curious to know how people end up in the paths that they do.
Hmm.
I looked up your LinkedIn. I saw you worked in CPG. How does
Hmm.
one go from CPG to creating content on finance, careers, and life?
Yeah. So I've always had a huge passion for personal finance, but I really didn't know what I didn't know, and there was
Mhm.
a lot I didn't know. Obviously, there's still tons I don't know, but before then, like I knew nothing. So I realized that, and then I wanted to just learn everything I could, get my hands on everything, read every book, every podcast, every video that I could to like learn about personal finance. And it was like this drug, like this crack almost of like fulfillment and like empowerment, because I was able to
Mhm.
make these quick changes, and then wham, like my whole financial future and current situation changed like this just off the few things. And so it was so empowering. And after a few
Mhm.
years of just like geeking out over that, I figured I really wanted to share that. Because I don't know, I just want people to feel what I felt. So I started a
Yeah.
podcast in 2019. I had done a podcast before, so I was familiar with the medium, and I thought, hey, it's a low barrier and YouTube's hard, whatever. So I started the podcast,
Mhm.
use Instagram to promote it in like 2019, 2020. Pandemic hits, nothing to do, classic. So I just went super hard on
Yeah.
that, and then really got into TikTok, and that's when things really got crazy. And it really started to grow and grow and grow, and that's when I got started to get more commercial interest and brand deals and things like
Mhm.
that. And so I was working full time at PepsiCo in like a leadership development program. I just got a new job
Mhm.
for them, like I was a district manager. But this podcast and these social channels started to really grow, and I started to
Yeah.
make a little bit of money, and then I started to make a little bit more, and then a little bit more after that, and eventually got to the point where I was making as much, if not more, from that as my job.
It's amazing.
And so a few months of that, and you start to ask questions. You're like, okay, well, what am I doing here? And
Yeah.
so I created a plan for myself to quit, and I gave myself 3 months. I think it was like
Mhm.
May or June. Yeah, it would have been June, to give my notice. And yeah, June 1st, and then September 1st hit, and then I quit, and then that was almost 2.5 years ago. So it's going
Amazing.
strong. That's the whole arc right now. There's a lot in between that, but that's generally the arc.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. No, we'll definitely go into the arc. I am curious to know. So you decided to go in full time into your social channels and content in 2021. Then is that correct?
Hmm. 2021. Yep,
Okay.
October 2021 was my last day.
Amazing. Amazing. And so you've been in this space for a while, which is not an easy thing to do. Like, we've seen so many creators sort of come and go, and the feed itself is constantly evolving. It's
For
constantly
sure.
changing. How do you stay on top of that? Like, are you doing research? Like, what has worked well for you, and what has
Yeah.
set you apart from other creators, according to you?
So I think early on you have to really get a gauge of what works and not romanticize creativity and not romanticize uniqueness, individuality. When you're starting with creative, you don't know what you don't know, and you just need to like get a formula for what will perform on the platforms. And so you kind of earn your stripes like that. You're not copying people, but you're like you're taking inspiration a little bit more because you really don't have a base. So that's what more successful creators will do is they'll kind of see what the trends are, what works. And when I say trend, I don't mean like some random dance or some random thing. I mean like
Right.
what are the best of the best doing and like how can I do some of that? And so you do that and then you get to sort of play in a little bit of a sandbox if you want to. And you could start to change a few things and then change a few things after that. And then that's when you find your style. But
Right.
I always say you earn the right to do that. And so once you really understand the fundamental basis of what good content is and what keeps people around and things like that, you're
Mm-hmm.
less beholden to these platform changes. For example, I always hear about, I've heard for years
Mm-hmm.
about TikTok changing, Instagram changing, oh, the algorithm's different, this, whatever. Shomik, I've never noticed it because that doesn't matter to me. It doesn't occur to me. And I
Interesting.
never, ever, ever would put my performance on the platform changing and the algorithms different and whatever. There are things that I have to
Interesting.
adapt to. For example, some platforms, will start to incentivize different things. So for example, TikTok is incentivizing longer videos. And so longer
Mm-hmm.
videos will do well, but that doesn't mean shorter videos won't do well. Like a banger is a banger is a banger. And these
Mm-hmm.
algorithmic changes aren't going to hinder me from my success or lack thereof. Like a lot of people and creators would have you believe. I really do not believe in that. I think sure you'll have to adapt and make some changes, and maybe some stuff will work better than others. But I I I don't think it's like as the reality of it is that it's not changing that much. Like if you're good
Mm-hmm.
today, you're probably going to be good tomorrow and the day after that, regardless of whatever changes they have. They would have to implement such a drastic alteration to the platform itself for it to actually the
Mm-hmm.
reality to be that it's not you and you just need to get better at what you do. Like that's I really am
Yeah,
pretty ruthless with that kind of stuff. So
I love that. That is honestly very, very refreshing to hear, because like I like talking to uh, people in the content space. Not so much like it started when like I started this podcast, and I realized, wow, distribution is really, really hard. Like,
mhm.
kudos to everybody who's built a following and is reaching out. And I'm always curious to hear like how they stay relevant. And you're actually one of the few people that has said, no, you know what, if you're the algorithm is a part of it. And it sort of ties into what this friend of mine also said. It's like at the end of the day, the algorithm is still people interacting with content. So
Exactly.
if you're human enough and it works with who you're reaching out to, you're whatever changes happen, like as long as you're engaging with people the way it resonates with them, it's definitely going to work. So that is
Yeah.
interesting to hear as well.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, that's exactly right. Like, the incentives don't ever change. Like, the
Hmm.
incentives for a social platform are to keep people on it longer. If you're
Yeah.
serving that goal, you're going to get the performance. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter where or whatever methods it is. If you are
Hmm.
sustaining attention on these attention grabbing platforms, you're going to be successful. And all these algorithms and all these changes and all these tweaks and all these tips and everything like that, it always just comes down to that. That's the fundamental thing. And so if you're good at that and you know what goes into that at a like, you know, what's the term I'm looking for? At a first principles sort of thing. Yeah, I was
Mhm.
thinking like startup lingo. Um, I really think that you'll really have a good basis, and like these algorithmic changes or whatever sort of external exogenous variables like won't matter as much to
Mhm.
you.
Very cool, very cool. And in terms of, as you said, like, you've sort of got on the path to having your own style, and it requires sort of learning from what's working well, and obviously not just straight up uh, copying it, but like giving it
Yeah.
your own flair. Uh, what was the moment where you realized that, okay, you know what, this is my tone, and this is what works what works really well with my audience?
Yeah, I think I experimented so much earlier on, and
Mhm.
it took me a while to find my flavor and my style. Like it's still somewhat like, I mean, the back and forth dialogue skit sort of thing is just a very easy storytelling device, and so that's why I do it. But what made me stick around with it, because I started to move away from it a lot, and I was still doing well with other videos and things like that. But what I really enjoy about it is, again, it's much easier for me to get a point across or explain a topic when it's in within dialogue versus like telling you to do something. And the
Right,
point of what I do is not to tell you what to do. It's to tell you what's out there, and it's to tell you what
right.
might be a good idea to think about and where you can go learn about it. But I try to never say this is what you need to do, right? And so I think with the stories and the back and forth and the things that I do, which is pretty much my go-to method now,
Mhm.
it's really just a way for you to absorb it a little bit less in your face, a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more educating. Like you can kind of draw what you will from it, and there's multiple interpretations and things like that. But I started to really fall in love with the whole acting thing and the
Mhm.
videos and the quality of it and the production of it and putting it together. And I started to watch more traditional film and traditional whatever just to see how they cut movies and how they do things. And I
Mhm.
thought I could bring that unique sort of element to it, even though it is something that a lot of creators do is back and forth, A B A B. I felt like I could do that. What does it look like if I were to do that extremely well? And like so that's what I try to
Right.
do now. Um, but it's a lot of experimenting earlier on, and similar to what you
Yeah.
said, it's finding what works and then adding your spin, and then you sort of grow into what you want, and then you find your voice. And my voice for me is doing it through those role playing skits or
Mhm.
whatever.
That is very, very cool to hear, especially the fact that your your studying is not just other content creators, it's studying film
Yeah,
and learning from that, and basically shaping your content to be 60-second movies,
yeah,
which is very, very cool. I have never thought of it that way. Again, I'm more of a consumer than a creator
yeah. Well,
on
no,
TikTok and Instagram. It's like it's interesting
yeah,
to hear the other side of it. Because I would have not pegged movies to be source material. But now that you say it, it's beginning to make a lot more sense to me, especially
yeah.
like when I'm looking at your content.
Yeah, and it's the cinematography, it's the lighting, there's a lot of things that I don't know if people notice. Similar to what you're saying, but I
Mhm.
do it for me now, and it's nice
Right.
because I always said this. I always say, man, if I could get to a place where it's performing well and I actually really, really like the content and I really like the video and I'm really proud of it, like that's the best place to be. Because I've had videos before where I'd release them and I'm like, it's not the greatest video, but it did really well. But do I want to like do
Mhm.
more of that? Because
Yeah.
what success really is the opportunity to like do more of it. And so if I'm getting
Mhm.
successful off something or a content or a style that I don't really like or don't think it's that great, then I'm going to grow pretty tired of it pretty quickly. And so
Yeah.
I think eventually when you do find a style you like, and for me, it was like taking these videos way too
Mhm.
seriously, like so seriously, like trying to do this and trying to like do doing acting practice and like trying to like implement spacing and dramatic tension and like all these things that I don't even know if people notice, but I don't really care because like for me
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. setting up new scenes, cinematography, whatever. Like I have a
Mhm.
videographer that works with me now. Just taking it
That's awesome. No way. Very
so
cool.
seriously. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So and that's just like worked well for me. And I'm really, the biggest thing it does is gives me energy from my work. And I just feel like, man, I'm proud of what I do now. So, and not that
I
I
love
wasn't
that.
before, but I am a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
more.
no. No, I completely get it. Especially like when you're spending so much time and energy in this. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then I'm sure PepsiCo would love to have you back. Like if you're
Yeah.
choosing to do this on your own terms, like you get to dictate the terms, and I'm so glad that you're doing it. That's sort of what my objective was with this podcast. I was like, look, you know what? I like talking to people. I like learning about their stories, and if this podcast does well, great.
Yeah.
If not, you know what? This is still a way for me to learn new things from people, and if anything, this podcast has now helped me sort of start conversations with people that I would logically not necessarily connect with. Like
Hmm.
I would have never thought of reaching out to you and invite you to, and just like have a conversation and learn about your journey. I would be like, why would you do that? Like, it makes no sense. But but now with the podcast, I'm like, hey, you know what? This could be cool. We could make a conversation out of it.
Hmm.
Someone who's an aspiring creator will probably see this and be like, okay, this is how Nate does it, and especially the fact that you're sharing so much about the amount of work that goes into a 60-second video.
Hmm.
It just helps people know that, hey, listen, this is a lot of work, and sure, people are just swiping and they're not even thinking twice, but like so much effort is going into giving you that entertainment and that
Yeah.
engagement. So it's really interesting to hear that.
Yeah, man.
um, so tell me this, like, now your work obviously requires you to be very online. Uh,
Hmm.
how do you find that balance between, constantly being online, staying on top of potential trends? And I know you mentioned that, I would be, I wouldn't mind seeing a video of you dancing to a song and explaining, I don't know, making a six-figure income. That'd be cool to see.
Yeah.
But like, how do you sort of find that balance between staying online and sort of, I don't know, maintaining your own sanity?
You know what? I'm actually quite good at that, I would say now. It
Mhm.
used to be I was really, really like all over it. I think I'm good at it in the sense where a little too good, where I'm like, man, I should be doing more. I should be like doing more stories or doing more engagement, things like that. Because
Mhm.
these days I feel like I just post my videos and like that's it. I really don't do much. I try to like engage in comments, things like that. I do want to get back to being actually more online, more in the weeds, more in depth and everything like that. But right
Fair.
now it's been good because I do have I'm lucky enough to have quite a balance in my life, and I've tried to set that up. I'm quite active. I work out every day, and
Mhm.
I set up those things. I don't really work on weekends unless I need to.
Right.
I play basketball a few times a week. I play different sports and intramurals and things like that, or not intramurals,
Nice.
men's leagues, things like that. And
Cool.
I think that's really what helps me get away from all of it.
Mhm.
But I would say like I don't feel as though it's not like I am on social media 8 hours a day. Like for the most part, like part of my day is writing, part of my day is shooting, part of my day is potentially editing, part of my day is getting on calls and talking to people. Like I feel like there's a lot of different
Right.
things that I do, and so that variance really helps me kind of like not get sick of any one thing.
Fair. Fair. That's a good point. Again, like, just it's interesting to hear the behind the scenes, because as someone who's more of a content consumer, like, I definitely spend
Yeah.
more than my share of time than I should on the phone. But so tell me about your staying active. What is your preferred go to workout?
Yeah, so my girlfriend is a fitness class instructor, and I don't know if you've ever heard of
Cool.
like Hyrox.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you've heard of Hyrox?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Hyrox. So I basically am doing that kind of style of training. There's this gym in Burlington that I go to, and I really, really enjoy it. And it started off as like a boot camp style, but then we had some new programmer, like a new guy come in. He's doing all the programming now, and then there's a Hyrox class actually tonight, and I might go after this. I don't know. I haven't decided, but I worked up this morning,
Nice.
so I'm pretty tired. But yeah, it's great because it's a great blend of strength and cardiovascular endurance and everything like that. And it's great for me because I like to get those classes in the morning, and it's sort of my anchor to the
Yeah.
day. And then I'm starting to do like trying to do more like pliability and more like stretching and like yoga. Like I'm
Mhm.
signing up for like yoga a few times a week now, and
Yeah.
really just like taking care of my body. And I'm starting to get more and more invested in that, and it's been kind of like a fun thing. I've always been quite active. I used to play sports, but I feel like I've never been more like on it, which is good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, have you ever tried, do you have any friends that do high rocks or anything like that?
No, it's actually, funnily enough, it showed up on my feed a couple of times. My friends and I, like, I've been doing a lot of strength training. Like, that's my preferred way to work out. But I signed up for a triathlon in July, so I'm getting my ass kicked,
Yeah.
getting swim times in, because
Hmm.
that is definitely the most humbling of all the three. Like, I've been running for a while, so that's not been an issue.
Yeah.
Cycling is okay, like
Yeah.
that I'm not too concerned about. But just like swimming laps in a pool is something I hadn't done in years, and I started doing it again in Jan,
Yeah.
and uh, it's been very interesting to see how much work I still need to do. But I got time; it's in July. And to your point, like I've also been trying to focus more on mobility, stretching, and I actually did yoga for the first time this year, and
Wow.
I got humbled really, really quick.
Oh, it's
It
no
took
joke, man. It's no
I
joke.
was I was like, okay, this is a lot harder than I thought. I'm getting slightly better at it, but yeah, it is. It's. I'm glad to hear you're focusing more on the physical health, because I find like if I like, similar to you, if I do it in the morning, I have a much better day,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
just the mental benefits from just going and working out, getting a sweat, is just versus days when I don't do it.
It's the
Especially here.
serotonin, or yeah, like the
Yeah,
whatever releases
yeah,
the happy chemicals that go off. I swear, man, the endorphins that are released, it really does. Like, and even yesterday, or no, the day before that, I didn't train, and I just felt weird. Like I always just feel weird
yeah,
when I don't train in the morning, right? So
yeah.
it's true, man. Your body does feel a lot different if you don't get that.
No, for sure, for sure. Coming back to content, and like, when you realize that, hey, what I'm creating is resonating with a with a bunch of people that are not just my friends. Um, like, typically what I've seen is creators tend to get like hockey stick growth for a bit, and then it sort of stagnates for a bit. Did that happen to you as well, or was it like consistently growing at a certain pace?
Yeah, it's like eras. Like there's like you'll have a week or two
Mhm.
that's just crazy, and then it'll kind of level off, and then
Yeah.
some time will pass, and then you'll have another growth spurt. So it's more like
Mhm.
stairs, let's say.
Right.
Maybe not as one to one as stairs would be.
Mhm.
Maybe it's like quick and then nice big step, and then up, and then sort of like that.
Yeah.
If you're pushing the pace, because a lot of people do experience just that one step. It's that hockey stick, and then they just levels off
Mhm.
fully. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's been distinct waves of growth, for sure. But it's going to vary for everyone.
Yeah, that's fair. And how do you deal with the times where it's just not, like, it's staying static, like it's when the count isn't moving? Is that something you try and optimize for, or do you just keep your head down and say, okay, I'm going to focus on the input metrics and the output will follow?
Yeah, the latter for sure. But I would say earlier on it was a lot harder,
Mhm.
because again I hadn't found my way, so to speak, and there was a
Right.
lot of things that I was experimenting with. And so I'd really get, growth would slow down, growth would stop. I might be losing followers at some, in some points.
Mhm.
And performance wasn't there. Videos weren't doing as well anymore. Like there was definitely very trying times, and that's just going to happen. I think these days I'm lucky enough to where my output is less, but the metrics are the average is a lot higher, and I think that's just come from years of like refining and working on it. And so
Right.
now, you know, I don't really. It is rare where I'm just like, man, down in the dumps over it. Like I'm just pretty detached from it now, and
Mhm.
you know, funnily enough, like things have been quite consistent. And these days, I don't really have a crazy growth spurt or anything like that. It is quite consistent. It's like a few hundred
Mhm.
people or whatever a day or whatever a week or whatever. But it's slowly going to the right. But I'm not really too concerned about growth anymore. I'm more so
Right.
okay. I've got this audience now. How do I serve them in a great way, and how do I do more? How do I do other things? How do I create other products or like what do I do with this audience? I'm kind of
Right.
less like, you know, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. Like I don't really care anymore. I've kind of gotten
Right.
to the point where I'm like, okay, cool. You got a big audience, let's say. Like what are you gonna do with it? And that's where I am now.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Um, Now, with this audience, obviously, I've seen the comments you typically tend to get. They're especially like on the. I noticed in the career series, like it's either you're absolutely right. This makes a lot of sense, or it's like this only applies to a certain
Yeah.
XYZ context.
Yeah.
Uh, it's bullshit in every other sense.
Yeah.
Like when there's like a certain sense of negativity in the comments, like, and I know you're not necessarily engaging with them as much, but you're still reading it. And how,
Yeah,
how
for sure.
how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, like, I had one guy randomly comment on a tweet of mine that was, and I was like, man, why did he say that? Like,
Devastated. Yeah,
I
no,
don't
for
even know.
sure. Earlier on, like when that first happens, it's devastating. Like there's nothing sure you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Or you'll like respond
Mhm.
to them and get into it with them. Like I went through all of that earlier.
Yeah.
Um, Eventually you get to a place where you're just kind of like, man, like you're just numb to it. I
Yeah.
think, but to say, if I were to say anything to my previous self, it's that like this person, no, one thing I did learn is that when they comment, they don't expect you to see it or return the favor. And I'd say
Mhm.
90% of the time, whenever I engage back, like they're either fold or they kind of dampen down what they're saying or whatever. And like 10% of the time, maybe they dig in even deeper and say even more wild stuff. But for the vast majority of the time, you
Got
just
it.
got them in a bad day, or
Right.
they weren't thinking about as if they were speaking to you. They're speaking as though you're some performer, some circus animal that they can just yell at. And then when you
Yeah.
actually engage back, like that's when they're like, whoa. Now, I
Yeah.
typically say to never, ever get in an argument with somebody in the comments. That's just a bad look because as a creator, you're representing your audience within your comments and you have a brand. And so once you comment, like people will see that and they'll see how you handle that as well.
Right.
I didn't realize that I didn't really ever make a mistake with it, but I didn't realize that until I would start to see like I'd make a comment or a reply and then it would get a lot of engagement because as a
Mhm.
creator on your own post, when you respond to something, it gets shot up to the front. And so
Mhm.
everybody that goes to the comments will see what you had to say and like what you stand for. And so it's almost like a PR thing at that point. It's like, man, you're making a statement when you respond to a comment, even regardless of the size of creator, like that's part of your brand, right?
Mhm.
And so
Totally.
I think you should never answer that with negativity, even if it's negative. If you're going to respond, have it to be, neutral or positive or whatever, or don't say anything at all. You don't have to say anything at all. But it is
Yeah.
jarring and it's going to be jarring for a while until you kind of get
Yeah.
used to it. So
For sure. No, that totally makes sense. And like I've seen some comments on your post, and they're like completely out of pocket. Like has no there's no reason for anyone to be writing it. Like
yeah.
I forget what video it was on, but like I remember reading it, and I was like, why is this?
Was
Like
it
this
on
makes no
TikTok
sense
or
to.
Instagram?
Uh, I think it was on TikTok.
Yeah.
No, actually, no, it was on Instagram, and it said something about, yeah, your life is so difficult. Try being a soldier or something like that. And
Yeah.
it was probably,
I don't even know what you're talking about. Like I,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
what?
That's
He's talking about how to network to get a job. Like, what?
yeah,
This makes no sense.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like, I'm sure, like, it's you've definitely got. This was just probably a drop in the bucket. But what has been the most memorable comment that you have read and that has
Man, there.
stayed with you?
Yeah, man. I think the comments that I would say not stick or I think about. I never really think about them, but like
Yeah, yeah.
if they're gonna stick, it's the personal ones. It's the ones that are
Mhm.
personal. Like for example, I've always had like a receded hairline. Like that's just something I've had like
Yeah,
since I
you
was
and me
younger.
both, man.
Yeah, yeah. And I years into my career, like I would get like comments about that. They would start making comments about my hair. I never thought about my hair at all. And I remember for a few days, I was like, damn, do I not like, I was like looking at my hair and then like, you're just like, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
you know, obviously I'm acting super hard and I'm doing all these videos. So like people would
Mhm.
start to make comments about my mannerisms and my head shaking and like those are the
Yeah.
kind of comments that other types of creators deal with all the time. Like more lifestyle
Right.
creators who are like personalities and things like that. Like the content is
Mhm.
them. My content is not me. It's whatever
Right.
I'm talking about. It's tech sales, it's investing, it's career management,
Mhm.
it's negotiating, it's whatever. They're characters. They're not me. I'm not telling a story. But when you
Right.
make the content yourself, you're gonna hear that all the time. But I've just somehow heard a little bit of it. It doesn't happen often, but I would say like that's
Mhm.
definitely the stuff that will get to you if you let it. And then, but eventually you just forget it, and then you're just like whatever. And like
Yeah.
I really don't think about it at all anymore.
Yeah.
But
If
I
anything,
can't
the
even.
engagement's helping driving more views,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
showing
But
it to their feed.
I would say that that's the stuff that like makes you like stop and read it for sure when they say something
Mhm.
about you. Like if they criticize the shit out of what I'm saying, like I really, really don't care. Like I actually like that's
Right.
fine. Like that has nothing to do with me.
Right.
So for creators that are like more lifestyle, I actually don't know how they do it because if I was seeing like,
Yeah.
okay, it's cool one-off hand thing here and there, which is what it is. If every comment was about like my personal appearance or how I looked or like it's tough to become numb to that. I'm sure they do, just like I've
Yeah.
become numb to other things. But man, like it's quite wild.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I also, as someone, like, as you said, like they're probably having a bad day or whatever it is, but I just don't understand, like, how bad of a day do you have to have that you looked at a video of someone you don't know and said, okay, you know what, I am going to type something very, very rude, which is basically, once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
Hmm.
And I'm going to write this and I'm going to comment, and I don't know how that makes anyone feel better about themselves eventually, but I mean, to
Yeah,
each their own.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
But I mean, that's the not so positive stuff. But going to the positive stuff, like, I'm sure you've received a lot of messages from people that have watched your content and have said, okay, you know what, this is actually super helpful. What's been the one that stood out for you from the good ones?
Yeah, man. A lot of it is really just like, hey, like my whole thing that I told you, I'm not trying to change anybody's life. I'm not trying to like
Yeah.
make you $1 million tomorrow. I'm just trying to let you know that like whatever you want to do, whatever you think is possible in your career or like in job, like you should break your frame and like there's probably a lot more out there for you and I want you to go find that. But like I'm not the guy to change your life. I don't think anybody can
Yeah.
change your life except for you, right? So I
Mhm.
love when people give me the feedback that like they watched something I did and then they started to read a little bit more and learn a bit more and they started to actually do things. That's
Mhm.
the stuff that I really, really like to hear. It's cool to be like, yo, dude, I love your videos. I'm like, love that too. Like that's awesome.
Mhm.
But what really like makes me somewhat emotional is like when I hear like what exactly the action that they
Yeah.
took after maybe watching something that I said. Um, and maybe they would have inevitably done that because maybe, but part of me is like, yeah, maybe I helped them get there a bit sooner. And so that's a
Yeah.
really great feeling.
And that's awesome. I love that. I love that, and I love that there's uh, the clarity on your end as well, and the lack of hubris that, hey, I'm changing people's lives. Like, the fact that you're very clear about, I'm going to share this. It might help someone get there a little quicker, or in some cases, they would have probably not looked at it at all. Like, especially like your career series, like the ones, like one I really liked was, I forget what it was called, but the one where it's the guy talking to his friend who works in consulting,
Yeah.
and he walks him through the whole thing, saying, yes, it's a lot of money, but these are the costs that you have to engage with. And
Hmm.
sometimes, uh, I'm sure there are a lot of people that have looked at consultants and said, hey, you know what, these guys are living the life, they make so much money, they're traveling all the time for work.
Hmm.
And if they haven't spoken to a consultant, they
Yeah.
probably
They might think
not.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's and as someone who has enough friends in consulting, I'd rather do anything else
Yeah.
than work in that space. So yeah, to your point, like, I think the content you create is super valuable, and it is very no frills, and it's something that I really like about it. And I like the back and forth format. I think that, like, I find it personally very engaging. And now that I've learned that you study film to craft your content, I'm going to be looking for source inspiration to see
Yeah.
which movies have inspired
Oh, well,
certain videos.
I don't know if I'll ever get that good where you could actually be able to tell that's from a thing, obviously. But I I think it's just fun, man. It's just fun to push myself and do more. And again, like I do think that it just helps me get up out of bed every day. So it's good.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of Nate, the person outside of content creation, you talk about money a fair bit. You talk about careers. Um, so what does Nate invest in?
Yeah, just index funds and ETFs, like the stuff that I talk about.
Yeah,
The,
yeah,
the really, really boring stuff. Obviously,
yeah.
I have a lot, like I'm investing in my business and I'm growing a
Of
team and
course,
I'm
yeah,
trying to do all that kind of stuff. And that takes money.
of
So
course,
there's a huge investment there, just with my, career. But
yeah,
index funds, ETFs, super boring stuff. I really don't have
yeah,
any, like I really am doing what
yeah.
practicing what I preach. So
I love that. Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of boring when it comes to my money. I'm just like,
yeah.
it's okay. Just keep putting them in index funds.
Well, you
You check.
you work at Uber, right?
I do. Yeah, yeah.
So I imagine you have some stake in Uber as well,
Yeah, yeah, I do buy into that. That is actually the biggest single stock exposure I have in my portfolio, is
for sure.
because, like, I buy like a certain percentage of my paycheck gets deducted and goes into buying Uber shares. Uh, but yeah, outside of that, I'd say I put in a couple $1,000 into Bitcoin. I was like, if it goes to zero tomorrow, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But if it goes high, great. Um, and that's just like that's the extent of my fund money. Like, it's
Yeah,
literally $2,000.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everything else is in index funds, and then there's Uber in the individual stocks.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, yeah, like I actually follow a lot on what you say as well. It's just like, keep it boring, keep it consistent, keep it easy. Like, you don't want
yeah.
to have
Super easy.
complicated systems where, at the end of the day, you yourself can't keep track of things.
That's the
So you
truth.
were saying now, yeah, sorry, you were saying that you're working on building your business, you're investing in the team. Um, what's the vision?
Yeah, I think right now there's a lot of things that I want to do. And it's working through that right now, but I definitely want to I've been definitely doing more like in-person things, like speaking is something that I'm super focused on. More PR stuff and a good amount of consulting for companies to help them with their social. um, but on top of that, also trying to like, I've always sort of put off building an email list and building digital products and things like that. So that's definitely going to be something I play around with this year and try to explore with that. But honestly, I really am enjoying carving out a brand here with my content, and I just want to take it as far as it can go. And you know, I feel as though I'm pretty close to figuring out what the thing I want to funnel the audience to is. I just have to sort through different options. Is it starting an agency, to help companies with their social media? Is it, again, building a financial literacy app or something like that? Like,
Mhm.
I'm sorting through that this year, and I definitely think I'm going to have an answer quite soon here, and then that'll probably be a huge focus as I try to make the most of the window that creators have. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And hey, look, based on what I've learned of following your accounts and just like now talking to you, like I have no doubt that you're gonna crush it. It's gonna
thank
be
you.
it's gonna be as big as you want it to be, and it'll be awesome. So super excited to see that play out. Um,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
cool. I just have the one last question for you, and this is probably the most important question anyone has ever asked you in your life. So no pressure. It is. Are you ready? The question is, if you had a theme song that played whenever you walked into a room, what would it be?
Oh man, I love that question. That's great. Um, a theme song. Oh man, dude. Um,
I told you it was going to be the most important question you've ever been
that's a
asked.
good question. That's a great question. I really like this isn't like a theme song, but
Mhm.
I've always really liked oh man, what's it
Yeah, I mean, it
called?
could be a song, but that plays every time you walk into a room.
Yeah. No. I have one. I know the song. It's kind of a popular song. Um, I Can you give me a sec? I really want to get this. I gotta
Yeah, of
nail this. I
course.
gotta look
Yeah.
this up. Um, I can't even XO. What is it? XO music. Oh, man, I can't get. I don't know what it is, man. But I know I have a song. I do have a song. Can we figure this out? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll tell
yeah,
you. Maybe I'll tell you afterward. But I really
yeah, yeah.
another
We'll
song I
add
really
it
do.
to the show, yeah, in post production or something.
Yeah. I really do like what's that one song? No, I can't remember anything right now. The it's is
It
it
is one of those questions where everyone has an answer that they know intuitively
in
know,
here? Yeah,
but the moment someone asks and you have to find the name of the song, everyone blanks out. So
yeah. I don't know.
it
I
is,
like AC/DC and like some of that rock stuff. Some of the
yeah,
stuff that they play at sports games, I think would be really cool. Like Zombie Nation would be cool. Like I don't know.
yeah,
Like I grew up on that stuff, and I used to
yeah.
actually when I was younger, we would be me and my brother would play NHL, and
Mhm.
when a lot of hockey teams score, there's like a horn that goes off. It's called like a goal
Yeah,
horn.
yeah,
And so I remember early on in the games, they wouldn't play the right ones. It would just be some generic ones. So me and my brother, what we would do is we'd have the speaker in our computer hooked up and the YouTube video ready to go. And then when we'd
oh, I
score,
love
we'd
that.
go and click the YouTube thing to play the actual goal horn. And so we memorized all the goal horn songs and all the songs and everything like that. And I think my song would probably be one of those songs, like just one of those classic sports. You're at an arena and they're playing it before they drop the
Yeah,
puck
yeah,
or tip off or
yeah.
whatever. So it's a
I
kind
love
of a
that.
interesting answer, but that's probably what it would be.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned AC/DC because Back in Black is my uh is the song that plays in my head every time I walk into a room. I'm like, okay, whenever I need to hype myself up, it's Back in Black, and just with the riff, I'm like, okay, this is where I know um, that it just helps me wake up and kick ass.
Yeah,
Um, but
nice.
hey, now you know that for the next time someone ever asks you this question, you need to have a title in mind.
Yes, the tighter answer for sure. Yes.
as as you build your business and you start prepping for PR, you never know.
You never
People
know.
could ask you anything. People could ask
Yeah,
you anything.
absolutely.
Um, awesome, Nate. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. It was, for me, it's always been about talking to people that I think are doing cool things. And in the process, as I learn things about them, I'm like, oh, this is something new. And I definitely learned a lot about how much work goes into creating content and just consistently going after it for like 4 years now.
Yeah, yeah,
Is it's not easy, and kudos to you for building an audience and building it on uh, content that actually helps people sort of learn new things, and like just being able to create in that vein for so long, and creating quality content. So all of this, ramble to say, I really respect the work that you're doing, and I understand. I'm starting to see how much work goes into it. So
yeah.
kudos to you. Good luck building everything with the business. You're going to crush it, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Okay, thank you so much, Shomik. I really appreciate it. And anytime you want me to come back, I'll be back.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. That means a lot. Awesome. Thank you for listening, everybody.